Have you got a split CV boot like this one needs replacing? Follow me through. Let me show you how. Here's a close-up. The boot is split. As it rotates, it's flinging the CV grease out all over the place. It is of course an MOT fail here in the UK and would probably fail inspection in most other countries, I expect. Get the car up on axle stands, handbrake firmly on, chock one of the rear wheels. I'm going to use one of these split CV Gaiters. You can buy them in the UK under the make name of Balecast. They're very tough. They come with a full kit of parts, about a tenner. I have used these before with success. They're excellent for the DIY mechanic who doesn't want to have to take his bearing hub apart, and at around £10 for the kit, about a tenth of what it would cost at a garage. An even smaller proportion if you were using a main dealer, or should I say main stealer. First step, remove the old boot. You shouldn't have too much trouble using a Stanley knife to cut it off. It hasn't been split long, this one. You can tell that by the fact that there's very little grease being sprayed around the surrounding area. If you need to clean out the joint or clean any of the grease off, brake cleaner is an excellent cleaner for that purpose. Use the little hose in the can. You can get right into the depth of the joint with it. Give it a good clean all the way around, because your new boot has got to grip to this edge. I'm going to pack a little more grease into the joint. Now, because this is a universal boot, it's undoubtedly larger than you're going to need, so compare it with the boot you've just taken off. I've also tried wrapping it around the shaft and the CV joint body, so I know how big to cut it. I would suggest cutting it with a brand new, very sharp blade. Go at it easy though, you don't want to end up cutting off too much. Now I need to cut this round here, so I'm just using a decent pair of scissors. Now the end of the glue is solid just there and needs to be cut off, and you'll end up with a small hole in the end of the nozzle. Now the edge needs to be good and clean, so I'm giving it a once over with some brake cleaner. If you've never done this before, use the piece you've cut off as a practice piece for gluing. Let the brake cleaner dry off. Now you should see that on one side, on the edge, there's a groove, and on the other side there's a lip. So you put it together so that the lip goes inside the groove. Now, I would practice, just very carefully, just practice doing that with the whole boot. Make sure it's all square. You could practice with the piece you've cut off. Start squeezing your tube at the bottom end. Don't forget to pierce your tube. You might find it easier to do it with your blade, and you can probably see as it starts to come down the applicator tube that it's a special black super adhesive. You run a bead of it into the groove, put the two halves together, just hold them gently in place for around 20 seconds. There's no need to fill the groove with so much glue that it all comes oozing out. Roughly half fill the groove in depth with the glue. This joint reaches full strength after about half an hour, so I'll put that to one side. In a little while I'll attempt to pull it apart and show you how strong it is. Now it's about 35 minutes since we made this joint, and I promised you that we'd try pulling it apart. Doesn't want to come apart, as you can see. That's a nice strong joint. It'll do on the car there. It's not going to see strain like that on the car. Give the shaft a clean down, because you don't want any grease in the way of you gluing the two halves together, particularly at this end where it's a close fit to the shaft. This is where it gets a little tricky, and there's a little bit of a technique to this. Make sure that you can stretch the boot around the shaft. If you can arrange it so that the groove is on the lower side, it does make it easier. Do around about 2 centimeters at a time. Do not try and do the whole length all at once. Believe me, I've tried. You can't do it. I would suggest that the top of the first concertina is a good place to stop. Put your glue in the groove. Bring the 2 halves together. Now the 2 halves will be under a little bit of tension here while you're gluing the first bit together. So hold for about 45 seconds or so. Just make sure that it will rotate on the shaft, that glue hasn't oozed out and glued the gaiter to the shaft. The top of the next concertina is a good place to stop. So work backwards from there with the glue. If like me you're working the wrong way up, you need to make sure that you're getting glue out of the nozzle and not just air, and slot that piece together. I find it quite good actually to hold the concertinas, because this section isn't under tension. You only need to hold it for about 20 seconds. Now at this stage I like to just have a little practice, and if you can easy enough get it together in one go like that for the rest of it, then go for it. And make sure you get right into the edge of where you got up to last time. Get it together. Once you've got it together and you can see a little glue squeezing out of the joint, hold it in place for about 20 to 30 seconds. Now inspect your handiwork along its whole length. Make sure that there are no gaps that you've missed. If there are, get some more glue in there and push them together. Now let me just show you the special kind of clips that come with these kits. At first glance they look a little like Jubilee clips, but they're not. At one end they've got barbs pressed through the clip, and at the other end a series of holes, which I hope you can see are not square. They've got little hooks in them. You put this around the shaft, you squeeze it as tight as you can by hand, and then you put the little barbs inside the holes like so. And then you can get a special tool for this, but this is just an ordinary pair of pincers. You then pinch that together, squeeze it, thus tightening it, and it grips. Like me the last time I did this job, you either can't find your tool or you don't feel too confident. You could of course use tie wraps. I've given this joint about 10 minutes to gain some strength. It's now time to put it together. Make sure that it's on square. As you can probably see, it's now, what's happening is as you start to put it round, the 3 little barbs are gripping 3 of the holes already. So you want to get it as tight as you can. Did you hear that click? That's it clicking into place. Make sure you've got it into place with sufficient room to get your tool in. I suggest holding the end down where the barbs are in the little holes, and then squeeze together nice and tight. Once you've squeezed it together, it won't come undone on its own. In theory, when it comes time to replace the CV joint again, you can get a screwdriver in there where I've got my nail, and you can prise it apart. Sometimes you can and sometimes you can't, I've found. Position the other end, try and position it so that when you clip it together, the boot isn't too stretched out like that. Let it relax itself back a little. Same trick again on this clip. I actually think that this outer clip is harder to do than the inner one. And there we go. Job's a good one. It'll take you under an hour, and that's cost me all of £10. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. If it's useful and helps you out, if you've got any experience, any tips, you know what to do. comments down in the comments section, and I'll see you again next time. Cheerio.